We're in the Comedy Cavern, which is in Bath. It's in a pub called The Porter, that's also a vegetarian cafe. And this is where I did my first ever gig with professional comedians. I did this gig in 1998 for the first time ever, and I was 18 and I was first on because I had to swap around with somebody else. And it was really good actually. There was probably about 100 people in, kind of on these little kind of stools here, and it was great. The good thing about little rooms like this is they're the same kind of people have been coming for years, and they're not really interested about whether you're on telly or anything like that. They just kind of, you know, if they think something's funny, they'll laugh. If they don't, they won't. And it's really useful to have normal people that just kind of go, no, that's crap, or yeah, that's really funny, because obviously by the time you get to the O2, you know, everyone's going to laugh, really. What's great about this is that there are loads of little gigs like this all around the country that, you know, even though sort of stand-up is going through like a boom period, like these all still exist, and they'll be here in 30 years time, and you know, various kind of comics, because it's such a small, compact, perfect room for comedy. You know, it's just the best way to see people. So this is the backstage dressing room at the Comedy Cavern. As you can see, it's pretty tight. But this is kind of where I was stood when I was 18 years old, before my first ever kind of professional gig. Kind of nervously pacing about. You can't really pace around, you can only like, that's as far as you can pace. When I used to do it at the beginning, I never used to get paid here, but you know, I just felt like, it feels like Wembley, you know, because you're stood here and you've got like probably about 100 people, and it just feels stuffed. And when they're laughing, because it's such a small room, the laughter just reverberates around, and you know, there's nowhere else you'd rather be, you know. The way the world was when I was little, there was, you know, I didn't go to anything, I just lived, you know, in a very quiet village, and nothing actually happened. So the idea of a comedy club, it just didn't exist. There was no stand-up on telly, but it was something I really liked. And then when you find places like this, it's like, they're almost like religious places, they're like churches. You just come here and, you know, you either really enjoy them or it's just not for you. But honestly, when I was from 18 to like 25, I've spent, you know, pretty much 5 nights a week in places like this, and loved it. I was a student when I first started here, and basically I snuck away from uni and didn't tell anyone, and kind of just had about 10 minutes of jokes, and I thought, well, I'll go here and see how it works, and it went all right. And then the next day at university, I felt like the king of the world, because I was sort of sat there going, what did you go to last night? Went for a drink? Oh yes. I only stormed the Comedy Cavern, which means nothing to anybody, but to me it meant everything. From 2001, I kind of gigged pretty much every night, and went from not being paid in the middle to doing 20 minutes at the beginning of the show where you get paid, and then eventually you close the show, you're the headline act. And I headlined here in 2004 for the first time ever, so I was 24 years old. I first did this place when I was 19, doing an open spot, but it was, that then was an arena, you know. There was, you know, you can't imagine what it must be like, sort of 18 years old, to do a gig in front of 150 people. It's brilliant, it's amazing. So, you know, it's always been a big gig in my head, and it's kind of odd now that I see it as a nice, fun, small gig, because when I was 18, it was as frightening as the O2. You know, it was this kind of, like, genuinely, fucking hell, I'm doing the Comedy Box, I need to make sure I'm good. But I think if you don't treat gigs that are as special as this with that level of respect when you're 18, then nothing will happen. Do you know what I mean? But I genuinely can't tell you how excited I was doing places like this, because this was it. You know, you can't get bigger than this, you know. This was always a gig that in my head was a marker. So from 2004 to 2007, whenever I was headlining here or comparing here, I wanted to have new material. So that was always like, I'd have this as like a milestone in my head, thinking every time I do here, I have to be better than I was before. So I wanted it to go well. So I put real thought into it every time I was here. But, I mean, the audience probably wouldn't think that, but I really tried. You know. So this is backstage at the Comedy Box. This is the dressing room, and it is exactly how it was in 1998. Nothing has changed. I never really had a master plan. I just kind of was happy here. Like, there was no, like, sort of interesting really, because like, it must be so different now, because if you're sort of 18 and you get into comedy, you sort of know that it's like this big career path. But when I started, it sort of genuinely wasn't. It was still quite an underground thing, and it wasn't on telly. It was an unheard of. So, you know, I used to just sneak off to these nights and going here. I remember watching Ross Noble here, and just being just so excited. And this represented everything and everywhere that you could watch comedy. You feel like you belong in somewhere like here, whereas the O2, you're acutely aware that, you know, any second you could just open a cupboard and there'll be like a teenage girl waiting for Justin Bieber, you know, or me, weirdly. I genuinely felt like I'd made it, whatever that fucking ridiculous term means, when I was, you know, headlining here. Doesn't get cooler than that, you know. Doing a fun gig and you've got cash in your pocket when you leave, and then you go and hang out with your mates. It was fine, you know. So it's kind of, I'd be slightly worried. You're ambitious because you want to be a better comedian, but not because you want to be famous. No, why would you dream of being famous? It just strikes me as odd. You just want to be a brilliant comic. There's an integrity and a purity to stand-up, and that's the beauty of it, you know. So it's not about fame, it's about getting these ideas out in the best way you can so you make people laugh.